But that was not the only evidence of the left being demented yesterday. Joy Behar, who is just out of her mind, she apparently took it upon herself to bash President Trump during a segment about George H.W. Bush, because this is really what the left wanted to do. I mean, the reality is what the left really wanted out of this whole George H.W. Bush spectacle, out of the entire hagiography for George H.W. Bush, was to rip on President Trump. We talked about this yesterday. They wanted to juxtapose the class and goodness of H.W. Bush with President Trump, who is not the classiest, best dude, right? That was their whole goal here. So Joy Behar started to go off on it, and Meghan McCain basically stopped her cold.
This president that we have now is trying to unravel everything that he did and Obama did. And if I ever become a one-issue voter, it will be about pollution and the greenhouse effect and
Can
the
we
fact
focus
that
on the president, please? I don't want to talk about Trump.
Well, I do
we're in the moment we're honoring a great president
who's passed. Excuse me a second, please. I want to talk about
but we're honoring, but I'm not interested in your one-issue voter.
I don't care what you're interested in. I'm talking.
Well, I don't care what you're interested in
We'll
either.
be right back.
When Whoopi Goldberg is jumping in to stop the fight, then you know things have gone wildly wrong. Apparently, it got even worse. According to a source, they told the Daily Mail that Behar threw her hands in the air as soon as the producers muted Behar's mic. They actually muted Behar's mic because she would not get under control. And the source told Daily Mail, Behar threw her hands in the air and yelled, "My God," and get this B word under control. And she said, "If this bleep doesn't stop, I'm quitting this damn show. I can't take this much more." And she says, "I've tolerated a lot of bleep on this show, but I'm at my wit's end with this entitled B word. Enough already, enough already. I'm not playing nice any longer," Behar shouted, despite the studio audience being able to hear it all. How dare Meghan McCain say, let's not talk about Trump's pollution record while we're talking about the death of George H.W. Bush. Amazing, amazing. Meghan McCain apparently, and Joy Behar continued to get into it. Apparently, McCain reportedly said, "I don't know why she's so upset. I just wanted her to focus on President Bush and not bring Trump into this for once." While hair and makeup people attempted to groom both of the hosts, producers tried to calm Behar down before returning from commercial break. Everyone was frantic, this is according to The Guardian, or the Daily Mail. The last thing they wanted was for Joy to walk off the show. She's done that before. Remember the Bill O'Reilly situation? She appeared just as disgusted as she did that day. They only had 2 minutes to contain this explosion on set and get everyone positioned to return for the next live segment. It was utter chaos on set. Now listen, I've been part of group shows with people on the left, and sometimes those people get angry, and I've had situations where those people have walked out of the room, not naming any names, but just because that is the way that people on the left sometimes act in these situations does not mean that Joy Behar is not insane, okay? George H.W. Bush dies. She's ripping on Trump about pollution. Meghan McCain, who knows a few things, by the way, about prominent Republicans dying in the recent past, says maybe we should pay attention to the guy who just died, and Behar loses her bleep. That's because, for the left, HW is just another vehicle for attacking President Trump. That's really what is going on here, and we all know it. And it's not just... No thanks, however, to some folks on the left who insist that the university should have canceled this speech. A particular no thanks to the UBC AMS, who are apparently very concerned that my talk will, quote, stoke intolerance and discrimination based on race, gender identity, and sexual orientation. They say that they fear that some students at UBC will feel threatened and targeted by my message. And then they follow that up by saying that they denounce all forms of violence and marginalization on campus, presumably not including marginalization of a mainstream conservative worldview. They're okay with that sort of marginalization. I have never, it should be noted, never called for incivility. I have never called for violence. But that doesn't stop anybody from accusing conservatives of doing exactly that. Stating facts, stating conservative opinions, that is not threatening. And if you believe that it is threatening, I have 2 words for you. Grow up. This is still a somewhat free society in which we all get to exchange viewpoints without running to the fainting couches. Now, I agree with the AMS that folks who wish to peacefully protest should do so. It'd be even better if they would come inside and then ask questions, as you heard right beforehand. We have a long Q&A session. It's my favorite part of the evening, and I always urge folks who disagree to go right to the front of the line so we can actually have some civil, nice conversation, discussion about issues that matter. But instead, the AMS is preemptively referring people to places like the Sexual Assault Support Center. Now, there are a lot of black marks on my resume, probably, but I do have a fairly clean record when it comes to sexually assaulting people. When I say fairly clean, I mean like spotless record when it comes to sexually assaulting people. So I don't think anyone's going to need to go to the Sexual Assault Support Center tonight. They say that people should go to Speakeasy, which I guess is for peer support and guidance in a safe space of non-judgment. I admit that this is not going to be a safe space in the sense that they mean it, since they mean safe from having your feelings hurt, and I believe that safety exists in a free country when you're allowed to express your opinion. They're also directing folks to Safe Walk, which is a transportation service accompanying students walking after dark. So, I don't know what they think I'm doing after this. This might be an overreaction, folks. No thanks also to Dr. Charles Menzies, who's an anthropology professor and Board of Governors representative, who said it was a bad choice to bring me to campus and mentioned the university's Policy 3 in objecting to my potential speech. Policy 3 apparently implements the BC Human Rights Code, which is as foolish and overbroad a piece of legislation as has been promulgated in a purportedly free society. For folks who don't know, BC's Human Rights Code states a person must not publish, issue, or display, or cause to be published, issued, or displayed any statement, publication, notice, sign, symbol, emblem, or other representation that indicates discrimination or an intention to discriminate against a person or a group or class of persons, or is likely to expose a person or a group or class of persons to hatred or contempt because of race, color, ancestry, place of origin, religion, marital status, family status, physical or mental disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or age of the person or that group or class of persons. No one is in favor of hateful speech, but this policy simply defines as hateful anything which is quote-unquote likely to expose people to hatred and contempt, which is utterly subjective. Now they say that what they really mean is anything that would be a reasonable person would assess as likely to expose people to hatred or contempt. Unfortunately, the people who are going to interpret that law are all members of the political left who will determine that it is reasonably likely that any sort of conservative speech may in fact be likely to provoke bad action on the part of people who agree with the conservative. This is why in the United States, which I'm an American, so I get to say it, I believe is a superior country to your own. Okay. Making friends and influencing people everywhere I go. In the United States, we don't have such laws because such laws are violative of basic precepts of the First Amendment. Free speech precepts. We understand there's such a thing as hateful speech in the United States, but we also understand that the definition of something like hate speech is endlessly malleable and can be used by people in power to simply quash people with whom they disagree. In fact, the UBC policy goes further than the BC Human Rights Code. It actually bans activities harmful to a respectful environment, which is an amazing statement. These range from expressions of disrespect, such as rudeness and gossip. I mean, have they ever been on a college campus? To bullying or harassment, and then they define harassment as intentional or unintentional, which includes ostracism or exclusion of a person that undermines an individual's self-esteem. We must never undermine anyone's self-esteem. Deeply imperative. Again, this is rather overbroad. Speech codes do not end well for freedom of speech as a general rule, and a free people are going to have to grow a thicker skin. Again, this doesn't mean you should be uncivil. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be a virtuous person. But when you start setting standards like no one must be offended, no one's self-esteem must be damaged, you are in for a hell of a ride. So tonight, here is my plan. I'm going to say a bunch of things that I think are simply facts, and then I'm going to state some conservative opinions, and we'll see if I get arrested. So here we go. You ready? Here we go. Here. This is a fact. There are two, count them, two sexes. Two of them, not three. Not three, not nine, not infinite, not attack helicopter, two. I know, horrifying. Women are women, men are men. Men cannot become women because we don't live in a magical land in which men can become women or vice versa. Men who believe they are women are not biological women. Transgender women are not women. They are biological men with a mental disorder. There are two sexes. People with a Y chromosome are almost universally male. People without a Y chromosome are almost universally female. The only reason I say almost is because there do exist tiny variations in the population with gender disorders, sexual developmental disorders. These folks are intersex. They may have primary or secondary sexual characteristics that do not match the presence of a Y chromosome. These are called genetic abnormalities. And this does not mean that there is a third phantom sex that exists somewhere out there. Why? Because the promulgation of our entire species is based on sexual dimorphism. The fact that folks are willing to completely subsume biology under the rubric of political correctness is complete idiocy and anti-objective truth. And indeed, it turns out the transgender advocates claim that no evidence must actually be shown of intersex genetics. That's just a red herring. When they say that folks are transgender, they don't mean the person's intersex. They mean that a person who is fully biologically male, who believes that he is female, is actually a female. In order to achieve this particularly nonsensical combination, both in terms of biology and logic, transgender civil rights advocates create a new category from sex, and this they call gender. Now, gender, in this view, is about maleness or femaleness. That's an entirely subjective category, not linked to biology. It's a social construct. It's not linked in any way to biology. So, a couple of problems with this right off the bat, just in terms of internal logic. First off, stereotyping. Okay, so if you believe that there is a gendered female and a gendered male, you are assuming there are stereotypes that describe femininity and masculinity. Feminists would argue with that. Second, this actually presumes that there are only two genders, maleness and femaleness. And then there are mixes of those various characteristics. Okay, so if you believe that there are actually a bunch of different genders, or that gender exists on a spectrum, then you have to explain why there are 89 genders and not 7.1 billion genders. Because it turns out that every human being on planet Earth, all of them, have a different combination of feminine and masculine characteristics. So if gender is just your feminine or masculine characteristic, then you as an individual have your own individual gender, which means that the term gender has no meaning. Right? It's just called being a human.